15 minutes to pack in what should be quite a different style for a lot of people, so I want to get through it quickly, but also hope that you guys can understand what I'm saying. So I'm Ming Kang, I'm the Secretary of MUDS. Just to new members, I see some new faces. If you haven't registered yet, or you're unsure about what's going to happen in MUDS, or whether your email's on the list, come talk to me at any point, and I'll talk to you later. But all good. So, debating. British Parliamentary Debating. What is it? British Parliamentary is a style of debating that's used in countries or continents like Europe and America. So the 3-on-3 style that we probably would know very well is something that's unique to Asia and the Australasian sort of area. So this is quite a style that's quite popular around the world, and this is actually the style that's used at the World Universities Debating Championships. So it's worth obviously doing because it's also very fun. So what do we have? We have two sides in a debate. We have the BP is that you have 4 teams. Okay, and I represented them with animals because I couldn't think, I don't want to use their faces without their permission. So we have, so the idea is that we have two people per team. That's one other difference. And the idea is that there are 2 people, there are 2 teams, so on one side of the debate, and there are 2 teams which are arguing against the topic. So there are 2 teams in the affirmative and there are 2 teams in the negative. All these teams are competing against each other to win. So just because you're on the same side, just because the birds and the dogs are on the same side, doesn't mean that the dogs don't want to beat the birds, okay? And vice versa. So your aim is to win, but the aim as well is also to not to contradict. So if you are the dogs, your aim is to win without trying to screw over the birds. I hope that makes sense. Here are the real names of the birds and the bees. We have the opening government, which is the first team to speak. Then we have the opening opposition, then we have the closing government, and then we have the closing opposition. And the speaking order is as such. These are the names, you don't need to know these names, but these are the names of each speaker. So the first speaker that will come up to speak today will be the Prime Minister. That's the first speaker of the opening government. Okay? So they speak, and then it moves to the opposition leader. And it would move back to the Deputy Prime Minister, then to the Deputy Opposition Leader, then to the government member, rah, rah, rah. Beautiful. Anyone got questions just over the procedure? All good? Simple? Cool. That went too fast. So, the idea also is that each of these speakers have different roles. So, the Prime Minister, for example, is one to, and we'll go through all the specifics in later training sessions, but just as a really basic overview. All the speakers, except for the whips, are substantive speakers. So they all present new material in a debate. They all have new arguments. They all have new things to bring to the table. And the whips act very much like a third speaker in a debate, in a 3-on-3 debate. So they are only there to rebut and to theme the debate and tell you why they won. The difference between the 2 teams, though, is that each team has a different idea of where they see the debate or why they think they should win. So the aim of most often for the opening teams is just to cover every argument that could come out in the debate. It is strategically sound if they just list, or not list, but go through every argument that they think is relevant to the debate. Because the closing teams shouldn't try and focus their material on stuff that the opening side has said. In a nutshell, obviously there are exceptions to this, but the idea is that the closing teams are meant to have unique material. So they have things which are called extensions, and you'll hear about them, and hopefully they flag it very obviously in the debate. But their extension could be like, well, they want to talk a lot about rights of black people in America, but we think that this issue is really targeted to women. And so women could be an extension, and that's often a sort of, I couldn't think of any other extension type joke, but often they can be. So women could be an extension in a debate. So the closing half might want to focus all their arguments onto women, and then the government whip will have to try and frame the rebuttal through the prism, they say, through the prism of the extension. So if their extension was women, then they're aiming to frame all their rebuttal through that extension. Okay? So that's a basic overview of how it works. In terms of speaking time, it's a little bit different again. So we only have 7 minutes to speak. Ideally, you speak between 6 to 7 minutes. And the reason why I've indicated it like this is because there's something called points of information, and I'll tell you what those are in a moment. But essentially, the first minute and the last minute of your speech is protected time. So during that time, nobody can come up to you and say, point of information to you. They can't interrupt your speech. That's time when you have, you can say whatever you want. Between that is your non-protected time. So in that time, you are able to have points of information asked of you. You don't have to accept all those points of information. You can reject them, and the way you reject those points of information, you can just wave your hand down, you can say no thank you, but it depends on your style of debating. and you don't want to do it so it negatively impacts on your speech. And you'll see how they do it. It might look a little bit funny the first time you see it, just see people jumping up and down, but that's the way it works. Any questions? Good? Good? Great. Oh, and also, the way the speeches work, you get one clap at 1 minute, and then one clap at 6 minutes, and then 2 claps at 7 minutes. Okay? So that just gives you an indication of when the projected time is over and when you can start speaking. If the adjudicator isn't looking at their phone properly and hasn't worked out that a minute has passed and you want to ask a point of information, feel free to stand up or just wait, give them a bit of time. But generally, that's there for your knowledge. So points of information are basically really concise questions or things that you want to ask the other side. And you're meant to do it really concisely. It should not be longer than 15 seconds long. In fact, you should aim to do it in 1 sentence and not try and ask a point of question, point of information, and just state something, because they'll just say, no, that's not right. So ask them a question and try and do it properly. Most speakers will take 1 to 2 per speech. We recommend 2 generally, because the idea is that the team should accept 4 points of information, 3 or 4 points of information to make the debate fair. Because if you don't answer any of them, it's not fair to some members of the debate. For example, if you're the opening team and you're debating as the closing team, if you don't accept any points of information from the opening side, it means that they can't actually talk forever in the debate. So they've spoken for the first quarter of the debate, but then from that point on they can't speak at all. And that will be judged negatively in that debate. So it's very important that those speakers take those points of information. In terms of how that works, visualize it with our birds and fish. So say the Prime Minister is speaking. It means that the speaker's the letter left that I just didn't kill. Those are the ones who can ask points of information. So if you are say you are the dog, say you're on the closing government, you can't ask a point of information of your Prime Minister, because you're meant to be on the same side, you're not meant to be hurting them, okay? Cool. And then, who wins? Because we've got 4 teams, how on earth does this win? How does this work? Essentially, there are different ways that we can win. The way that it works is that you are allocated a rank, 1, 2, 3, or 4. Makes sense. And generally in tournaments such as the internal tournament that we'll have coming up, and in any intervarsity that you attend, the first team will get 3 points, the second team will get 2 points, third team will get 1 point, and the last team will get 0 points. Yes? Sorry. That's right. Okay, so the last team will get 0 points. Okay, cool. So in that circumstance, these are some options of how the debate could go. So we could have the opening government and the closing government come first and second, and then the opposition come third and fourth. If that was the case, we like to nickname it, or we like to term it, the government bench win. So this is a bench, the government bench and the opposition bench. That's one way it could work. It could also work the other way. You could say, you could have the opposition bench win. In this circumstance, I've had it so that the bottom 2 teams have won. So the closing teams have won. You can say it's a closing half victory, or whatever. And it can also be flipped the other way. You can have the opening win as well. And also, you could also have the, mix it up, and you could also have the internal, I think they call it the internal diagonal win, and the external, diagonal win. The terms don't matter, but the point is that any combination of people can win. And you'll hear more of this in the future, but often it's strategy in these debates. If you're a particular team, and you know when other team is winning, you want to ride on their coattails, you want to engage more with the material, you want to win with that team. So even if you know you won't come first in that debate, you can still aim for a second. You can still aim to win if you're on that team side or you're directly rebutting against them. So that's the way those things work. And we've got that one as well. In terms of the scoring range, the last thing I just want to cover, scoring range is quite flexible. So in 3-on-3, you're limited to about a scoring range. We have an average of 75. You're limited to about 70 to 80, and realistically, for most speakers, it's at 72 to 78. If you're very, very good or very, very bad, you'll get a little bit above that, but it's a bit limited. In BP, the official range is 50 to 100, whilst no one here will get a 50 and no one here will get a 100, I don't think. So most scores are probably limited to around 65 to about 90. Realistically, that's more like 7 or I might that one up. But basically, 65 to about 85. That's around the range that we use at Worlds. And most speakers, unless you're in the grand final of Worlds, maybe you'll get around the 90 range. But for most speakers, it will just be people flexible. You're more likely to get a score like a 78 in a BP debate. And this stuff is relevant to adjudicators more so because obviously you won't really see very many scores and internals at the moment. But, and we'll go through that at a later point. Just to let you know, the scoring range is a bit larger. And the way it works is that even if I thought that, some speakers were in-house adjudicator and saw some people, and I didn't think they were that strong as like individually speakers, but I still rank them first. Their scores still need to be higher than all the other teams to win that debate. So those things work, but we'll go through that in adjudication training. And I think as part of the internal competition, everybody will have to do with some adjudication, so it's probably good to know this in future. And that's all good. Any questions about how it works? No. Great. And we'll just wait for the debate to start. Thanks.